So Laura Ingraham had on Republican Congressman Jim Banks and ex-Republican Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich to speak about the infrastructure bill that was recently passed through the Senate with bipartisan support. Take a look.
Joining me now is Jim Banks, Indiana Congressman, and Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor. Congressman Banks, 19 senators basically signed on with the left to go right into the reconciliation bill. We knew this was going to happen. Senator Cassidy tried to debate me on this, and sorry, he ended up looking like a fool. Your response?
Well, this is just insane, Laura. We're trying to win back majorities in the House and the Senate. How do you do that when Republicans act like Democrats? How do we convince the American people to vote to give Republicans the trust once again to lead when they see stuff like this happen today? We know that inflation is on the rise. The price of everyday goods costs more, and real wages are declining in America. It's only going to get worse because of this deal. It's a travesty that Republicans would go along with it. Also, Laura, you have to recognize that the same Republican senators that went along with this infrastructure deal, that only 9% of it is actually infrastructure, the same Republican senators that denied Donald Trump an infrastructure deal that cost half of this, that all of it went to infrastructure. They wouldn't let him accomplish that under Donald Trump's watch. Why did they go along with Democrats and give Joe Biden a win on Biden's watch? I just don't get it.
Now, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, she reacted to the passage of this bill, and it was instructive. Watch.
With all the respect in the world for the Senate bill, I'm glad it passed. I'm glad it's bipartisan, but it is not the totality of the vision of Joe Biden and the congressional Democrats. If we could have to do this much bipartisan, okay, but that is not the vision. The vision is to build back better.
I love the hand emotions, Newt. They're rubbing Republicans' faces in this after Republicans were trying to assure our viewers and conservatives across the country that it would make it less likely that the $3.5 trillion would ultimately pass in some form. Your reaction?
Well, I mean, look, it's very hard to understand. I agree with Jim. I can't understand why a single Republican senator would have voted for this. It didn't meet any of the standards they promised. It isn't paid for. It isn't restricted just to infrastructure. It does have tax increases in it. It has all sorts of left-wing proposals and projects and ideas. It massively pays off Schumer in New York City with what I think is a enormously expensive tunnel that probably is larger than about half the state's share of the infrastructure part of this, and it has no really serious reforms in it. I can't imagine how these Republicans can go home and with a straight face suggest that they voted for something that's truly bipartisan. And of course, it's all going to get worse in the House because Pelosi's running a dictatorship and she has absolute control of her narrow margin, but it's a sufficient margin. So who knows what's going to come back? And I think from the standpoint of any conservative voter in America, this is a disaster. It's an unnecessary disaster, and it's a self-inflicted wound by the Senate Republicans.
Yeah, Congressman Bernie Sanders is calling the next monstrosity, which is the follow-on reconciliation bill, the most consequential bill since the New Deal. So to remind everyone, universal preschool, 2 years of free community college, adding dental, vision, and hearing benefits to Medicare, cutting carbon emissions by 50% by 2030, and an immigration overhaul that ends up being amnesty. It's just the tip of the iceberg, an enormous amount on the new climate core and climate change giveaways. Congressman, could the House possibly stop this?
I hope so. We've been called back the week after next, Laura. The House will come back into session. We will do everything we can to stop this. What the American people need to know is that Joe Biden is a socialist president. He's governing as a socialist. He's adopted the Bernie Sanders playbook, and this is a big example of that. But also on top of that, this will grant the widest reaching amnesty that this country has ever seen to somewhere between 12 and 20 million illegals, including 1.5 million migrants who have come into this country illegally since Joe Biden has been president. This bill will do that too. So it's dangerous on many levels. We'll do everything we can to fight against it and stop it.
All right. A new poll, Newt, is showing that Americans' optimism after 6 months of Biden has taken a nosedive. It's dropped nearly 20 points, since May. Are you surprised that this agenda and what we're seeing at the border, obviously new COVID variants and so forth, that the Democrats still decide to go left when they marketed Biden as a moderate?
No, I think the Democrats are caught in the logic of Bernie Sanders and AOC and the left wing of their party. There are three, and I think Jim just captured it perfectly. This bill could be entitled Socialism Now, because that's certainly why Bernie Sanders is excited. This bill could be entitled More Inflation Faster.
Okay, so first off, I wanted to point out how Newt Gingrich looks a little bit like Darth Sidious. Okay, secondly, so Jim Banks claims that the fact that his Republican senators are going to somehow lose elections because they voted in favor of this infrastructure bill. I mean, I'm sorry, a lot of them, number one, have already gloated about how great this bipartisanship is going to be. Now, an overwhelming majority of the senators didn't vote, but these guys, they wanted to be able to go back home and they wanted to be able to say, hey, look, I got y'all free pre-K. I got y'all tons of good paying jobs. And I got y'all for 2 years of free community college. Also, logically, take somebody like me, for example, who's on the left. Just because I have a few Democratic representatives voting in favor of some right-wing fucking corporate bailout doesn't mean I'm not going to all of a sudden vote for the party that does more right-wing corporate fucking bailouts, meaning the Republicans. I'm still going to vote blue. Now, I might go out and try to primary that person. I might try to, rally up support against that person and put in an actual progressive in their spot. But whenever it comes down to it, I take a Democrat or I take a Republican. Dude, it would be a few light years away before I could ever see myself pointing at a Republican and thinking that they're a better candidate. I mean, they're just not. They're not for the people. They have always been the party of the wealthy. They try to use rhetoric as though they aren't. No, they've always been the party of the wealthy. So, in whose right mind thinks that voting on this infrastructure package is going to lose Republican seats? If anything, it's going to come back to bite us in the ass, and we're going to lose seats, or we're not going to gain any more seats. And, those Republicans are going to go right back to doing what they've always done. Whereas right now we're seeing this huge sentiment, even on the corporate left, where you have people like Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren calling out Biden, telling him to erase $50,000 in student debt. Why? Because if I don't have to pay monthly fees for my tuition, then I can actually stimulate the economy. It might not be going into some bank's hands, but it's going into somebody else's hands. So, yeah, this guy's a fool. Like, there's not much else to say about him. He's a fear-mongering fool who wants the viewers of Fox News to somehow think that Joe Biden is a socialist and that he's being controlled by Bernie Sanders. Dude, I wish he was being controlled by Bernie Sanders. Truth is, he's not. Are we getting some good shit out of this bill? Fuck yes. But this is not quite what Bernie Sanders had in mind. But this is going to be one of the most consequential pieces of legislation that we have seen in a while. I'm just hoping that whenever it goes back to the House of Representatives, that AOC and the squad are actually willing to potentially block this bill if they try to water down their partisan bill, which actually provides, money for human infrastructure and climate provisions. So I hope that this isn't over, but, really, I just hope that we get as much as fucking possible, because the UN just released a report saying that essentially, we're in the fucking red zone. We're going to be seeing over 1.5 degrees increase in the average temperature year by year. Dude, if we don't do something about this soon, then we are fucked. I don't care what you think, if it's not worth losing whatever is going through the right's fucking mind. Look, if we don't have a planet to live on, well, it's just that. We won't be around anymore. God forbid Elon Musk gets a handful of people to go colonize Mars. Good luck. That's not going to be me, and it's not going to be you. So we need to focus on this climate change shit, and I really hope that they use these bills passed through reconciliation to, actually address it for once.